Hello, this is at Dongdaemun History and Culture Park Station. When you exit the subway station, you will immediately see the DDP building. It is probably the most unique building in Seoul. It is the work of legendary British architect Zaha Hadid and was built by Samsung C&T. The characteristic of this building is that it looks different from every angle. It is not a simple hexahedron, so it is called an atypical building. It is the world's largest building among these curved structures. It is characterized by its organic combination that looks like water flowing without any joints. When you actually go inside, there are no sharp interiors like the exterior of the building, and everything is connected in a curved shape, even the handrails on the stairs. If you look at the front, you can see the ruins. Originally, there was a baseball stadium and a soccer stadium here. When this building was built, the stadium was demolished and the ruins were discovered while digging the ground. So the ruins were left in a preserved state. During the Middle Ages in Korea, this was a military base. At the time, it was the largest in Korea and was said to be as large as the entire area of this building. It was said to be the most elite military base. The barracks were located right next to the eastern gate of the old capital. It had to be the most elite military base because the fastest route for the Chinese army to infiltrate from the north was through the eastern part of the capital. The carriage road was the best developed, starting from the eastern part of the capital and continuing north to what is now North Korea. The DDP building began construction in 2008 and was completed over a period of 6 years until 2014. As you can see, all parts are curved and the shapes of the panels attached to the exterior of the building are all different. Because of this, the construction period was bound to take a long time. Before constructing this building, I asked a German engineer who had built a curved building, and I learned that he had to hit the panels by hand one by one with a hammer to match the curves. However, since this building has an unprecedented number of curves in the history of architecture, it was predicted that if the panels were aligned by hand, it would take about 20 years. That is why Samsung became the first company to manufacture an automated curved metal panel forming machine in-house. And this building has no columns at all, inside or outside. The building frame itself is structured to withstand gravity. So the building was also built using a completely different method. So you could say that it is the result of a culmination of engineering technologies. This area is the center of Korea's fashion industry. Since the Middle Ages, this area has been home to a huge market. Since the 1950s, when large-scale sewing factories were built, there have been many people working in the fashion industry. This is a large-scale fashion cluster area where all processes from fabric production to clothing completion can be handled in this area. People who run small clothing shopping malls in Korea had to go here. Since they could get the cheapest and highest quality fabrics, there were a lot of people who came to shop for clothes. Until 2018, there were a lot of foreigners here. However, they are not seen much these days. Most of the fashion industry has become online. In the wholesale industry, such as fabric and sewing production, they are starting to fall behind China, Indonesia, and Vietnam. On the day I visited, there were not many people, even though I visited during the peak time of the day, Saturday afternoon. In reality, many places have closed because business is not going well, and it is no longer a hot place for young people. Although it is not as popular as it used to be, you can often see stylish men and women when the Seoul Fashion Week event is held here at DDP every spring and fall. I started from the DDP building and walked to Dongdaemun Gate. All the high-rise buildings you see around here are clothing shopping mall buildings. The building in front is Pyeonghwa Market. This Pyeonghwa Market was for people who fled from North Korea to the south during the Korean War. The word Pyeonghwa Market means peace if you interpret it. It was named in hopes that the people who fled from North Korea would return to their hometowns when peace was restored. When they could no longer go to their hometown of North Korea, they desperately made and sold whatever they could find. Among them, ready-made clothes sold the most. After the Korean War ended, Koreans bought fabric and sewed clothes themselves. It was a time when only the rich went to tailor shops and had custom-made clothes. At that time, ready-made clothes became extremely popular when they were sold at this market. and the market prospered greatly. If you look to the right, there is a river flowing. It is Cheonggyecheon River. Gwanghwamun is 3 kilometers away to the left along this river. If you cross the river and go to the right, there is a really old building. If you go inside that building, it is a market. Each building in Pyeonghwa Market sells different products. That building mainly sells shoes. Usually, shoes are made on the upper floors of the building and then sold on the ground floor, so all the production and sales of products are done at once in that building. When you enter the building, there aren't many people. That's because this is a wholesale market. I visited on the weekend, so there are more people in this wholesale market on weekdays. I came out on the other side of the building. This time, I'm going to Dongdaemun Gate. It's about 300 meters away from here. Dongdaemun is the eastern gate of the old capital. It is currently designated as Korea's treasure number 1. The characteristic of this gate is that the entrance part of the gate has a double wall structure. To prevent enemy invasion, the most vulnerable entrance was made into 2 layers. There were gates in the east, west, south, and north to enter the capital. But Dongdaemun was the only gate with a double structure. They shot arrows from the top of the wall to prevent enemies in the north from breaking through the gate. Enemies trying to break through the gate were trapped inside the wall and completely surrounded. The entrance to the door is not visible because it is blocked by a wall in front. The entrance to the door is to go to the right of the door you see in front. This is inside the Dongdaemun Gate. So it used to be outside the old capital, but now it is inside. The reason this gate was designated as Korea's treasure number 1 is because it is the only one that has been preserved in its original form since it was built in 1396. Most of Korea's traditional buildings have been destroyed and damaged during numerous wars, so many of them are unknown as to their original form. This gate plays a very important role in the restoration of Korea's cultural assets. This time, we are walking along the old hill fortress of Dongdaemun, which is now a park. Across the street on the right, you can see Dongdaemun, where I was standing earlier. I'm climbing up the hill in the park. If you look straight ahead, you can see the old castle walls. They built the walls on the high hill to defend against enemy forces. If you climb up the walls here, you can look down on the landscape of the area. As I climb up the hill, yellow rape flowers are in bloom. People are sitting here and enjoying the view of Seoul. You can also see Namsan Tower, a landmark of Seoul on the mountain far away. You can also see the DDP building, which is where I started. The building you see right behind Dongdaemun is DDP. I'm walking down the hill and down the famous grilled fish alley. If you look to the left, you can see Dongdaemun in the distance. It's a place where grilled fish restaurants are densely packed. It's a place where office workers from nearby come for lunch during weekday lunch hours, more than on the weekends when I visited. I'm going to take a look around since I'm here. Maybe because it's the weekend, the restaurants are closed. In fact, this is a place where you can see more office workers than tourists. However, if you go a little further into the alley, you can see some places that are open. This is the starting point of the full-scale grilled fish alley. It has been about 40 years since grilled fish restaurants have been concentrated here. Before that, there were various restaurants selling various kinds of food. However, when one restaurant started selling fish, business got better, and all the surrounding restaurants started selling grilled fish, which is how it is today. Many of the buildings here are very old. Most of them were built in the 1960s. The space is very narrow, so you can see the chef grilling fish outside the restaurant. If you look to the right, you can see a long line of people waiting. This is a restaurant famous for Dakhanmari. Dakhanmari is one of the few regional restaurants in Seoul, and many people outside of Seoul don't even know that this dish exists. It is a dish made by boiling chicken with noodles, vegetables, potatoes, carrots, and green onions like soup, and eating it with Korean chive salad. In fact, many people in Seoul don't know this dish. It is known as a dish that Japanese people like more than Koreans. Ironically, it is a dish that has become popular among Japanese people, and most Koreans have come to know it relatively recently. There are many people waiting here too, and they are all waiting to eat Dakhanmari. The restaurant in front serves dog meat. It may be shocking, but in Korea, dog meat stew is called bostling. Most Koreans don't eat it much these days. It's because they don't know if the meat distribution process was as hygienic as beef or pork. I've only had it once in my life when I was in elementary school. I remember eating the meat very softly and with a deep, seasoned flavor. Animal protection groups often protest, saying that dogs are pitiful. I think it's okay to eat dog meat if it's distributed as hygienically as pork. I'm an unusual case among Koreans because I eat unusual foods without hesitation, and most Koreans almost never eat it. In fact, there are many more people who hate it. They say, "How can you eat dog?" However, it was a very luxurious dish that even Korean kings ate in the Middle Ages. This is Gopchang Alley. Gopchang is a dish made by grilling the small intestines of a cow. This alley is lined with restaurants that specialize in this dish. This may be difficult for foreigners to eat. However, it is a very popular dish in Korea. Koreans began eating small intestines of cows during the Japanese colonial period. Koreans who settled in Japan slaughtered cows, sold the meat, and felt bad about throwing away the remaining intestines, so they began to cook them and eat them. This spread to Korea, and now you can find places selling Gopchang dishes anywhere in Korea. If you walk along the road in front for about 4 minutes, you will arrive at Gopchang Market, which is famous among tourists. This concludes my Dongdaemun walking tour. Thank you for watching the video.